Agenda. So we're going to say welcome along to Wolves of Westminster editor Patrick Timms. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Johnny. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Now, this Channel 4 debate last night, the first of a number that we're going to see, a few Zoom appearances as well, I think, on Sky News, amongst other places, is showing the public how quite diverse the candidacy is, not just in terms of skin colour or demography, but actually in diversity of opinion.
Yes, well, I thought certainly it was really great for the public to be able to see that, you know, a lot of different politicians will have different answers to the same problems. We all know the problems we're facing at the moment with the as you say, the cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
Yes, and I thought it was because a lot of people do think, you know, oh, Tories, they think this and this, Labour, they think that.
Yeah.
But actually, you know, you look at particularly, you know, the issue of taxation, for example, and there you have the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak saying, well, you know, really, you can't, taxes have been raised and they have to stay where they are because you can't borrow your way to prosperity. And then you have Liz Truss, the current Foreign Secretary, saying, well, actually, no, but you can't tax your way to prosperity either. So there was some real sort of disparity there. There were one or two ding-dongs, I think.
There were, weren't there?
Yeah, there were. And I think you could certainly say that at times some of the contenders were certainly putting the word candid into candidate.
Kemi Badenoch said about Penny Mordaunt, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt.
No.
And I thought...
Yeah, you had that.
Yeah.
You had Tom Tugan had also saying to Rishi Sunak, yeah, well, you said, you know, that the boss told you to...
The boss told you to say that,
You know, I think certainly, to be fair, I think it's also good for the public to see this to some degree, because the House of Commons is just like any other workplace, just like this one in the studio where we are at the moment, and clearly...
I get on with everyone.
I'm sure you do, but it's one of those, like, you know, people will have different conversations, and it's widely known in any kind of workplace that has humans in it that...
You're right.
You know, various participants in a conversation, their recollections will differ violently from one another as to what was actually said.
You're
so,
right.
You know.
So let's just see it at first hand. Let's take a few clips from last night's action.
Is Boris Johnson honest?
Sometimes.
Is Boris Johnson honest?
There have been some really severe issues, and I think that he has paid a price for that.
I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt for as long as possible, and ultimately I reached the conclusion that I couldn't, and that's why I resigned.
So he is not honest? That's the question, yes or no?
There was a number of reasons that I resigned, but trust and honesty was part of that.
Ms. Truss, is he honest?
He has been very clear himself that he made mistakes in government. But he had a huge range of achievements.
Is he an honest
Brexit,
man?
he did deliver on the promise.
OK, well, we'll get to that. If you want to support him, fine. We'll get to that.
And then Tom Tugendhat said, no, and that was the end of that. And he actually got a round of applause for that. So a lot of batting of Boris away, but of course TV time is short time, Patrick, and we wasted a little bit of time in the debate, didn't we, over that?
Yeah, I'd be slightly stronger than that, to be honest, I would say. I think we actually, just about the whole first quarter of it, was encouraging the candidates and the office to Boris bash. And you think, well, really, was this the best use of time? We did have the opportunity to hear from lots of different visions, but I think that there could have been more time for that if it hadn't been organised in the way that it was. And if I might just speak a little about one of the candidates.
Yes.
Yes. So now Liz Truss is talking about lowering taxes. Personally, I think this is an attempt to be more of a politically astute move than an economically astute one.
Really?
Yeah.
Because she represents the right wing of the party that believes in tax cutting more than perhaps the others.
Well, it's more that you've got an election only a couple of years out. And realistically, if taxes stay the way they are, what is the real choice in that particular arena between the Tories and Labour? So I think what Liz Truss is calculating is that if the Tories lower taxes now, Labour coming into power, if they did in 2 years' time, would have to raise them, which they always do, in order to because they want to spend more. So so having done it, having lowered it now, would give a much clearer choice for the electorate in that election. But that is a political sort of decision to make. It's not really an economic one to make.
That's very, very interesting. Now, we're going to talk about the right wing of the party here. And, of course, we have Kemi Badenoch, who is the darling of the right wing as well. And as we know, she got... how many did she get? She got 49 votes of the Parliamentary Conservative Party. And Liz Truss and her gang are saying, look, come on, Kemi, you've had a really good, round here. Time to surrender your votes to Liz Truss because Liz is the big candidate. And Liz needs them at the moment, and Kemi says, absolutely no way am I going to surrender. I noticed something else last night, as did our colleague Daisy McAndrew, which was a sort of wink, if you like, between Rishi Sunak and Kemi Badenoch, either the sort of the left and right here. So Kemi hanging on in there, as long as she can get a cabinet position in a Rishi government. What do you... I mean, this is all speculation, but it's all part of the fun, isn't it, as we wait for the Monday third round?
It is all part of the fun, and I think you could well be right. You know, this is always the sort of the plan B for the candidates, you know, as they'll be whittled down. And yes, you could well be right that she's angling for that. Speaking of what happens, because in a week's time, we'll know who the final two are. Now, when that goes to the membership, I think what we're going to see that's going to be most interesting is, well, who they pick, but I mean what we can read into who they pick. You've only got an election 2 years away. The party's been in power for 12 years. Now, typically, when you're choosing a leader at a point like this, if you don't really think, your party membership doesn't really think it's going to win the next election, then you'll probably go for the one that's sort of manifestly suboptimal on the grounds that you sort of, you waste that bullet in this particular shot because you're not expecting to hit what you're aiming at anyway. Whereas if it does think it's got a chance of really winning the next election, it's going to go for someone who's, you know, different, shall we say. So I think that's what that's really going to tell us by September the 5th is we're going to get a real sense of what the Tory party membership, what its base actually thinks about its chances of winning the next election based on which candidate they pick now. And
that person out in front at the moment is Rishi Sunak, who has led easily the most polished campaign with his 8.8 million impressions on Twitter and the Sunak chemist shop, and look at me, you know, like a sort of Mrs. Thatcher kind of story of owning a little corner shop and living above it, etc.
Look at me, but don't look at the sign behind me that's misspelled.
Oh, yeah, he had a bit of a spelling mistake, didn't he? A bit of a spelling mistake.
Yes. I mean...
What was the spelling mistake? There was an extra I in there, wasn't there?
In the word campaign, yes.
Campiane.
Yes, well, I'm afraid to say we did make a rather flippant remark about that on Twitter, but as I think most people did.
Yeah, we all spotted that.
He's run a very polished campaign, as you say, but... he is also the one who's favoured by the most of the parliamentary party.
Yeah.
But not necessarily by the membership. And if you look at the last time that happened, that was Ian Duncan Smith.
Yes.
And he lasted 2 years.
Yes, he did.
So,
and he was one of the only Conservative leaders that never got to be Prime Minister, like, for example, Michael Howard. And he's a trust candidate as well, in the sense that obviously he also got a parking ticket for having a party, didn't he, as well? He's a little bit close, and Tugendhat gave him a proper sock, didn't he, last night, when he said, well, it's only you were only in favour of that because the boss told you to.
Yeah.
So what was that exactly about?
Well, of course, as I said, we don't quite know, do we? None of us were privy to that conversation. Evidently, the two of them were, and as I said, the recollections do differ violently. I'm just going to stop and correct myself there. I said it was actually, the last time he was favoured by the membership, but not the MPs. That's what I meant to say.
Right, yes.
Yes, but...
we knew what you meant.
Yeah, it's like I say, we weren't privy to that conversation. I mean, really, any of them could say anything about that kind of thing, and it's not as though any of the rest of us can prove it or disprove it. So, you know...
We shall see. It's a fascinating debate, and particularly as the polls... in terms of who performed best in the debate, flipped everything the other way around. So Tugendhat, you might think, at 32 votes amongst the parliamentary party, was out of it, and yet he walked home with the most approval amongst TV viewers. 36% of people said Tom Tugendhat performed best, followed by Rishi Sunak at 24%. And then, I'm afraid, it wasn't so good for Penny, Kemi, Liz, and I don't know, who, between them, only got 12, and 7% between them. So... is it too late for Tom Tugendhat not to be relegated on Monday?
Well, don't we have another debate tomorrow night as well?
We've got another one, yes, so they've got another chance to mess it up.
Well, they do. They've also got another chance to get it right, let's be fair.
Yes.
And they've had their first one now, and it was on Channel 4, let's be honest. So let's see now what happens. But I think with Tom Tugendhat, I mean, it's actually similar to what was said obliquely during the debate, because he voted for... against the NI rise.
Yes,
and
national insurance.
One of I can't remember which one was saying, yes, well, it's all right for you. You don't have cabinet responsibility, so it's a lot easier for you to do that.
Right.
Now, perhaps in the same vein, actually he was able to just sort of walk it in last night's debate, because he could just come out and say no to Boris Johnson. Is he honest? No. A lot of the other people there have served in some kind of cabinet capacity at some stage.
Sure.
And I think actually I wouldn't even put it down to who's got different principles on what. What was the breakdown there? 4-1, 4 of them saying something evasive. One person, the only one who's never had any kind of senior...
He was freer to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is a real asset in a TV debate.
It is, and in terms of the popularity and the way the public views that, yeah, I can see why, but at the same time, there you go.